Tonight is Ches of Teves, Tashin Samech Tes, on Samech Tes of Yerushal's Samech Tes.
Alright, so we saw there was the Koyach Samech Atzmi, Hayuli Atzmi, which was Nimtza Ba'oretz, and that was connected, or that was parallel to the concept of the Yesh Amiti in our Moshel. And then we saw there was the Ayin of the Yesh Amiti. Well, that was the Ha'ora Klolius, which is Nimshach from the Koyach HaTzameach, and it's a Ha'ora carrying in it the Etzem Koyach HaTzameach Atzmei, but it's two Klolius and two Be'ofen Shel Hiyuli Adayin, even though it's not the Hiyuli Ha'atzmi, for there to be any smicha of tzmochim protiyim, or for it to be a mokeh for tzmicha protiyas. And then we saw there was another madrega, which is called the ayin of the yesh, and that's the ayin of the peiros and the tzmochim, what they grow in the earth, and that's what he called a ha'ora protiyas, so we'll see more about that as we go along. And so we saw that the koyach hamishpashet v'nimtza mimenu on Omad Ches L'mayla. In other words, the koyach which is mishpashet and is to be found from the koyach hatzameach ha'atzmi, who koyach lahatzmiach. It's amnam already shayt to the inyan of hatzmiach, b'efen kloli, avol koyach kloli. And we're going to see a little bit later on in the Omid here what sort of kloli is it. What do we mean by the expression kloli? Hainu, the klolis inyan, we mean that it's kloli in the sense that it's shayach and it's a mokeh for the klolis inyan of tzmicha, for the whole generality of the inyan or concept of tzmicha. And then he puts in brackets, what do I mean by that? What is the view in that expression that it's a klolos legabi the inyan of tzmicha, who shenoisein mokim ve'efshoros le'inyan ha'tzmicha. In other words, that in that level of that ayin hakloli, there's already a efshoriyas, and what we call an asinus mokim are giving a possibility that they should be from that the inyan of tzmicha. And that's why we find it comparable to the inyan what we spoke about in the other dugma that we brought to it, the three madregas of chayim, sort of a tikkun, and we saw that in the inyan of chayim of a tzura, then we saw that they were kloliyim adayin legabi dinyan of the final gemar or yitzia of the yesh minai, and what that's in of the tikkun. And we saw that the inyan particularly of the chayim ha'iyuli or chaponim out of chayim ha'iyuli is nimshach in the tzura ha'kloli is that we saw that was efshoriyas ha'matziyas. It wasn't mamish dinyan for matziyas. It wasn't even a mokeh at dinyan ha'matziyas. It was possible that from that it could be nimshach ha'inyan shel matziyas, and we brought the dugmans of that to the inyan from Olam Habriya, that in the inyan from Malchus Tatzila is not shayach klau. Any shayach's klau to be a mokeh le'inyan hayesh. Mashenka in the inyan of Bria is what we call efshoriyas. There can be, and there's a possibility for there to be a appearance of the yesh from that madrega, albeit der tzimtzum mesuyim, aber upon it's already possible. Efshoriyas hayeh. And we brought the dogma from the middle Rebbe that it's like that there's a mosach b'fnim, which albeit it's an optical, how do you call it, it's a opaque, what's the expression? Transparent. But it nonetheless causes a great difference between the two levels. And that's the Indian that even though the Chayma HaKloli, as we call it, or in this case here, the Indian, the Koyach HaTzmicha HaKloli is, they are already, they have a certain similarity to the Mokia from which the Nimsha, the Koyach HaYuli HaAtzmi, because they're also Kloli and they're also moved out. The difference being that from that Koyach HaKloli there can already be, and it's possible, there are tzimtzum al-kaponim to bring out of that the Indian, meaning that the tzmicha is kolol there, even of half shota, as we call it, in an abstract form, but it's already there. Ma'ashenkin in the Koyach HaAtzmi mamish, it's not even there in a form of iskalalis in that even, it's not even there b'klal. And so the same with Malchus Tatzilus legabi Elam Abriya. So therefore we call it in if it efsharius le'inyan hatzmicha. Lo shehu b'china shaychus lahatzmichom lehatzmochim ulahatzmiya b'foyal, and it should cause growing in actual action. Ki hu mi'ein koyach atzemeach atzmei. We have the cloud of air is mi'ein hamoer, and every ha'ora is mi'ein hamoer shaloi. And therefore it's also mi'ein, it has in itself certain essential characteristics of the etzem koyach atzemeach atzmi, being as it is mi'ein, therefore it has in itself the union of being mufshat, moved from actually giving any specific growth to come forth from itself. V'lochein moved down be erech miliyesh koyach proti, and therefore it moved down from the whole value state or erech, or the whole possibility that it should be able to be a specific koyach. Ki im b'chinas koyach klali levad, it's only a general koyach. And as we'll soon see later on, well, that generality is a very abstract generality. It's not just a series of klolim in a cloud, but it's a very general concept of cloud. And therefore, it's a koyach klali levad. Umamela muvan, and therefore it's to be understood, she'ein bo yischalkus protiim cloud. It doesn't have any form of division into protiim, or you can't even, as you might say, break it up or examine it in profundity and come to any specific constituents, but it's completely beyond the whole concept of Ischalkis. Meyacheshu rak koyach kloli al inyan atzmicha. Omikom, okay, but nonetheless, I would say, what's the difference between it and the koyach yuli, the koyach atzomeach atzmi? Omikom, okay. Meyacheshu rak oil koyach atzomeach. It's only a oil from that koyach atzomeach atzmi. Harihu nikra rak b'shem ayin lavod. And if it's called by the name of ayin, it's the ayin of the yesh amiti. And it's called ayin sharei eno atzmi ela ha'ora levad mi etzem koyach atzomeach atzmi. So even though it's mi'ain and it's got that mi'ain similarity and connection with the koyach atzomeach atzmi, nonetheless, compared to the koyach atzomeach atzmi, it's only a inyan shel ayin, meaning that it's a luminescence and a ha'ora, and has no real essential dimoyin to the original koyach atzomeach, but it's sufficiently dimoyin to be called mi'ain, but again to the inyan of being klali and moved out be'erech from any inyan does. And the name ayin is only a relative term, comparing it to the koyach ha'yuli ha'atzmi. Gabi further madrigas dahainu, you read it into actually giving forth tzmicha, then it's not an inyan from ayin, it's still a certain gili of the Yeshua Amiti. Gabi the emissary Yeshua Amiti, which is the koyach atzomeach atzmi, then it's an inyan from ayin, being as it is only a ha'or. Sharein atzmi ha'or levad mi'etzem koyach atzomeach atzmi. V'lochein, in brackets, hu b'chinas koyach kloli al kol panim now. ועל ידי מציאוסי יוכל להיות אחר כך בבחינת האור הפרוטיוס, שהוא הכוח הפרוטי להצמיח, כולו, ואין מה שכוסו בדיבור המסכו יוינוסי תוף ריש מם פרק א'. Now I wish you הצלחה. If you look over there, it's like the famous miser they tell us. Somebody asked the Vuna Gorn, I think it was, he asked him a pshat in a certain Indian that he had a kasha, and he told him he should look up a Teves of it in this place. And he went and looked up the Teves and he didn't see any shaykhs whatsoever. No shaykhs whatsoever, regardless to what he was asking. I've already told you the story. So, well, you mean to say you don't remember? So everybody's just looking blankly. It's just, they don't know what the heck I'm talking about here. I told you the miser. So he couldn't figure what on earth, and he broke his head for days, and he fasted, and he tried to work out what was couldn't see any connection between that Teves and what he asked, what was the question that he asked. So he came back to the God and he said, he's terribly sorry, but he's done everything he possibly could, to find out, and go and find out was it the kesher from that Teves to what he asked. So the God said to him, there's no kesher, no kesher between that Teves, what you asked. He said, what I wanted you to notice is that Teves finishes with a kasha. He very rarely Teves finishes with the word v'tzorik hiyun. V'tzorik hiyun means kasha. He doesn't have any teretz at that particular time that the shas was printed, or the Teves said what he said. He had no teretz on the kasha that he asked. And yet nonetheless, immediately after that, there's another Teves. And immediately after that, there's another Teves. You assume that even you've got a very serious kasha, you don't have to worry, you just have to keep learning. So in other words, he didn't answer him a teretz either. He just taught him that you have to keep, you mustn't worry if you don't have a teretz, you just have to keep going. You have to get teretz. Anyway, I see that everybody's barely in the mood for humorous quips. But anyway, suffice it to say, it's a very similar case here. If you look up that Perik Aleph in the Hemshech of Yoinosi, Tov Reish Mem, I mean, I tried very hard to work out what sort of a kesher is there to this Indian. So, if I want to be tremendously ad lib, I could maybe find some sort of, make a sort of a kesher. I don't know, there's obviously some misprint or something. In my opinion, that Perik in Hemshech Yoinosi, B'chag B'atzela B'tov Reish Mem, is talking about tshuva, tator, and tshuva. Maybe there's some kesher with tshuva, the tshuva divided into two levels, tshuva lo and tshuva tator. I don't know, but anyway, it's rather annoying and disabling when you meet up with a thing like that. Obviously there's some, either it's not that hemshech, it's not that perik, or I don't know what are you going to do? But I was going to Satan, it's going to suchen. But it doesn't occur in that old Hemshech. Who are we to say? However, the Rebbe says that you should look up here. So you look up here, Perik Aleph in Hemshech Yoinosi, and you learn a bit of Chassidus Lishma, of Sainian. However, the Rebbe says that Lochain, therefore, it's a bechinas koyach kloli al kopanim ker denau. Now what's the lochain? He said, since it's not atzmi, it's only ha'ora, it's not mamish atzmi like the etzem koyach etzemer. It's only a ha'ora admi etzem, therefore it's also ponim, at least it's a koyach already kloli, which we couldn't say about the koyach atzmi. The koyach etzemer atzmi, we can't say he's kloli, he's not anything but kloli, he's moved over tachlis abdullah from any inyonim of tzmochim. Mashenkin, this one's already a koyach kloli, and through him, alidei metziusei, yuchal liyos achar b'chinas ha'ora protius, shehu ha'koyach ha'proti latzmir. So now we notice here that he says that alidei metziusei, the fact that he's already there and he has a certain metzius in the form that he has a metzius, it's possible for there to be afterwards the koyach ha'proti. Pirush adova, from the koyach ha'atzmi, it's not shayef b'klal to be any form of any mokir klal to the infant smicha. Mashiach, once you've already got this ha'ora, even though it's ha'ora klali, and a main ha'etzim v'chulev, it's already a ha'ora, yes, so that at least gives it the power to be a klali, and the very fact that it's there, even though it's also not a direct connection with the ha'ora proteus yoter, because the ha'ora proteus yoter we're going to see is only nimshach through ayin of tzimtzum. We'll soon go into that further as we go. But at least the fact that the ha'ora klolis is at least there. There is such a material as the ha'ora klolis, and therefore there can be later the development called shahu, the Indian of the ha'ora proteus. So if it wouldn't be for the ha'ora klolis, then the ha'ora proteus wouldn't become nimshach. But he said it's not a direct connection, and therefore he said it's only alidei matzi. We'll say the very fact that it's there is such a matthias as the ha'ora klolis, or that gives rise, and that's what we see, that the ha'ora proteus and nimshach mi ha'ora klolis b'derech matzia, b'derech hamtzor, because we'll see it comes to tzimtzum golos, we'll see a bit later on. Or but if not that, then it wouldn't even be shayach alidei tzimtzum. And afterwards, he says, well, Rabbi, and later on when the peiri grows, meaning the actual fruit that comes out from the ha'ora shniyah, which is the ha'ora proteus already, yeah, where are we? He said later when the peiri comes into being, yeah, and this has already become a noticeable pre on the surface of the earth, then it's already a yesh nivdal. It's already something completely separated from the koyach which brought it about. Meaning the koyach haprati yoter. And it has no state of ayin whatsoever. Ki'im b'bchinas yesh gomu murigash b'chol achushim, that you can, it's a complete yesh, and you can experience it or feel it with all the physical senses, batam or bareach, taste and smell, and mishush and touch, ukadema, baria, and similar also in the Indian ria, you can see it and it's visible, v'chulu. It comes out of he said that the ultimate end of the whole process, which is the peiri, that's another in altogether to all these ha'oras that we've seen. All these ha'oras are somehow or another ha'oras from the previous madrega, from which they become a ha'ora. But the peiri, that just appears to be nimta al pnei ha'adama, and it's a yesh gomo, and it seems to have no yachas or no kesher whatsoever to the previous state from which it came to Hainu HaKoyach Ruchani inside the earth, and on the contrary, it's completely nitfas begashmi, that all the gashmis, the koyachis and chushim are able to experience it and take note of it, etc., etc. So therefore we see that we've got now the other extreme. We started off with Ayesh Amiti of Gil Eloki, which was the Koyach HaTzomech HaAtzmi, and then we end up on the other extreme with a Dova HaShayach Lazeh HaOilom B'Tachlis, something which is nitfas in all the Chushima Agashmiim, and has no Kesher Goloi Klal with Koyach Aruchni, what it grew from. And that's the union of the Koyach HaTzomech HaOlech HaProtiyah. So that was the Rebbe Vedimta, Lefize, Ki Yesh Kan, there's here in this whole Indian, Gimel B'chinas. Here we come back to where we started off earlier. So we have now 3 states, Yesh, V'ayin, Yesh. In other words, we have the Yesh Amidi, which is the Koyach HaTzameach HaAtzmi V'Klali, but that's, like we said, that's a Gilui Eloki. Then we have the Ayin, the Ha'ora, and then we have the union of the Yesh, which comes out al pnei shetach ha'oretz, What is it? The Peiri Hanitzma. So Limzer 3 Madregas Klolim. However, as we pointed out, yeah, the Ha'ora Be'emter is Mischalik L'Shnayim. And there's a Ha'ora Achmis V'Kloli is from the Koyach HaTzameach HaAtzmi. And then there's a further Ha'ora Prati is Nimter, that altogether, yeah, we really have 4 Madregas, not just 3. And when we say that we have 3 Bechinas, we mean Klolias. Yeah. And that's the famous, the usage of the Lashon in some of the Rabbeim, B'Lashon HaMishnah, Shtayim Shahein Arabo. In other words, you have the 2 Yeshes at either end, that they're Shtayim, or B'Emes, the whole Inyan makes up Arabo, because in the middle you got Ha'ora B'derech Ayin, which is Mischalik L'Shnei Madrega. There we are, we have the Inyan of the Gimel states of Yesh Ve'ayin Ve'. Omnam, he says, Muva. It's from that it's all to be understood. She'ein smichas ha'peiri meha oras koyach hatzameach ha'atzmi. He says it's moving, however, that the actual growth of the peiri, but that's the other end of the yesh. That's the yesh komo meha oras koyach hatzameach ha'atzmi. It's not from that ha'ora, which is the koyach hatzameach ha'atzmi. In other words, the first level in the ayin. In other words, not from the ayin boifen kloli. As we pointed out, how is it likely and how can it be from a ha'ora ruchnias, which is a me'ena etzem from the koyach hatzameach ha'atzmi, and it's tachlis haruchnias, tachlis haklolias, then how could from that grow a tzemach, a peiri or a tzemach gashmi? Or berfrat, shu min nivdal prati, and particularly that any tzemach which will grow is a min nivdal, it's a separate species, and it's also specific. It's got its own limiting inyonim which differ completely one from another tzemach, which means that it's moved, it's magusham and in its own gashmiyas, with all the inyonim of its own mubal dika gashmis dika matziyas, and that's what's mantle is from another mitziyah. So you can't get that from the koyach hatzmeach, from the koyach ha'oras, koyach hatzmeach ha'kloli, because it's not shared to any such inyan. And as we're going to see as we go along, we've already had 2 inyanim in that. We've already said on the one hand that koyach hakloli is a inyan beyond the erech of anything specific. And then we saw another lashon which we mentioned, that it's ein b'fidas metzius. It's something which is still, like we pointed out, ayin. Ein l'zeh gedesh or metzius, l'gabi, how we understand metzius, and therefore it can't be a mocket to something which is mamish metzius kashmiyas. And therefore we'll see as we go along that we're going to deal in more details of what do we mean by saying that something is a pshitus, adayin, it's in a state of heder hametzias, which we call in the Lashon of Chassidus pshitas. And we'll see more about that as we go on, and that's why we're paying very special attention here to this first level, which is the ayin of the yesh amiti. We're going to deal with that in some length in further inyonim in this hemshah. However, he says that you can't say that would be a mockif for something which is a min nivdal prati. Sure. So now we're going to come up here with a kashiya, and we're going to ask a shaila which it needs, they call it some careful attention. And we have to be very definitive as to how we learn what is the kashiya and what is the teretz. So comes along the Rabbi now, and he says, "Ve'im noima," and if we will say, now that means to say that maybe we could suggest that we could say, and if we could suggest that we could say that's like a kasha. It's like saying, why don't we say that? We could say it, and then why don't we say it? Ve'im noima, how does the tzemach haprati livdal v'minoi? How does that come from the koyach hatzomech hakloli? the koach ha'ora, I mean, the ha'ora of the koach HaTzameach HaKlali. Yeah, so we said, no, it can't come from that. It has to undergo, the ha'oras in order to get to it. So he said, no, maybe we could say, shezehu alidei haloas man. Maybe we could say that this is through what we call an arousal milmata. Haloas man, the simple translation of that is haloas mayin nukvin, meaning the arousal milmata lamaila of the makabel legabi dema mashpia. That's an expression in the Kisvei Arizal and the Sifrei HaKabbalah for the makabel arousing itself to be the giving of the ashpur on the part of the mashpia. In other words, one of the two famous expressions, mayin tchunin and halos mayin nukvin. So the mind chunin, that's what we call masculine water, masculine shefa. That's the hashpah of the mashpia to the makabel. Ilu mind nukvin, that's the arousal of the makabel to wake up the mashpia within the mashpia. And that's called haluas man, the arousal, the going upwards. Ila the inif mind chunim is called yeridas mad, the going down of the mayim d'chulim, or hashpah's mind chulim. So the Rebbe said, you're planting a seed. So if you're planting a seed, then the seed goes into the ground, and it makes what we might call like a form of an arousal from itself. Yeah, it causes like an arousal to the koach in the aretz, which is the koach tzmeach, or ha'aretz of the koach tzmeach. So why can't we say here that Eino Hanami, the order from the koach tzmeach, the ha'ora klalis is very klali and it's very muvdal, but maybe if we'll say that the planting of the seed of any species is like a halos man, it's like a calling out and a arousal of the self. And we'll see that arousal of the self that goes in the form of a beetle. The derech klal is a form of beetle. How is the makabel mo'er to the mashpia lidei that he's marel or bitul el the mashpia, and alidei that what he's marel beetle to the mashpia, that's how he calls out the ashpire. So maybe we could say that there's a special type of beetle whenever you plant a seed or plant which is a seed of any given species, and maybe we would say that makes a ha'ora, how do you call it, a halos man, makes an arousal, and that calls out of the ha'ora klalius, a shefa, which gives rise to the eventual growing and power to draw it up and bring it upwards out of the ground. And then you wouldn't have to say that there are two madrigas in the ayin. All you need to say is there's only one madriga, and that's the ha'ora klalius. So therefore he said, maybe we could say that, because we find, if you sow seeds of apples, if you plant apple seeds, then that causes an arousal in the earth, and what happens is that it grows a tree which is matim to that seed. In other words, you plant apple seeds, you don't get all of a sudden a fig tree, unless some sort of an ass happens, unless it be a Rebbe Chanina Ben Deis or somebody. Although normally, if you plant apple seeds, then you get an apple tree for worse, because there's a certain halos man, prati, which that goes into the koach tzmeach of the earth, and it calls out it arouses, and it's mo'ir in the earth, this ability to be mashpia lefier at that particular type of halos man. And he said the same is not only with that species. He said that because Dabizaka Pratisatrim, Sheish Beklal Shal Ha'oris Koach HaTzameach, Lot Seis Me'ahelamela, that it calls out Miseira, I'm sorry. Miseira, koyach haprati shel tapuchim. So in the koyach hatzomayach, inside the earth, there wakes up a specific hashpoah, a koyach prati, which is shayach to apples. And that's within the general rule of the Oros koyach hatzomayach. Now we're not talking about which one yet, but the pashtus we've made the clothes. Yeah, Lot says mea helamela agilui. So that's what happens when you put tapukim in the ground. It causes a certain arousal, and that causes the koyach hatzomayach to give forth a necessary shefa, which will be matim to what you put in. Dainu, you put in apples. V'im yizru shkeidim. If you plant what do you call them, almonds, then yitzmachu shkeidim, it's going to grow shkeidim. Hari kol zeh hoya ef shaloima. Full stop. Those are the kasha. Amamela says the Rebbe, if that's the case, that if there's some activity going on in every planting of a seed, and that activity is the form of an arousal, and it makes a specific arousal, then maybe the Eibishter gave that, and particularly we find that all these inyonim of halos man, how they are in gashmistic inyonim, also are miyayin the way they are in ruchnistic inyonim. So we find that the inyan of halos man is very powerful, because we see that alidei that certain inyonim, even by the Adam, what he makes an arousal, and he calls down all sorts of hashpoyas, milmaila. So we see that there can even be hashpoya milmaila lifiyomim, which is not be'erach kol kach to the halos man. So therefore, said the Rebbe, maybe that halos man that you plant, that calls out from the koyach hatzomayach haklali shebaoret, and that's how you get the inyan of the growing, and then you've got just one ha'ora klolius in the middle. You don't need to divide it anymore. That's the kasha. Says the Rebbe b'derech teretz now. He says, Harei kol zeh, all of this hoye ef shaloima b'peiros anizroim. All this would be possible to say in the fruits which are sown. Peiros anizroim. Avo ma noima. But what are we going to say? But prote mini asovim shahim minim rabim ad ki chadal dispoer. With all the other forms of grass or vegetation, what they are multiple and how they called myriads of species, until it's impossible to count them. Ad ki chadal dispoer. You had that Rosh Bayez of a tzaddik when he gathered all the wheat together in the 7 years of good. It's written that he gathered a bit ad chadal dispoer. He gathered bar ad chadal dispoer. It was impossible to count it anymore. So I said the Rebbe, we see there's so many different species all over the face of the earth, and it's impossible to count them. V'heim einam nizroim klal, and they're not sown at all. Since they're not sown at all, then you haven't got this whole taina that maybe when I sow something that I cause a halos man lefi eracha inyan azeh, but maybe that's got a power to reach into the kloli and bring out just like halos man has a blessed power in itself. That we see that it will jump certain erachim. Maybe that's what happened. So the Rebbe said, yeah, well, that's good in the things that we sow. But what about all the millions of asovim all over the face of the earth, and all the vegetations, and all the jungles, and what they just grow all on their own. Nobody sows them whatsoever. So there's no zriya, and if there's no zriya, then the kumte said there's no, how do you call it? Halos man. V'heim einam nizroim klal. Umadua b'makim zeh. And why is it that in one place yitzmak ace of zeh that hasn't been sown, but in certain places it grows only this one, davka, precisely. U'b'makim asheni tzomeach ace of acher. And in other places, another form of vegetation altogether. And he said nobody has sown it whatsoever. You might say, what's the difference between stem vegetation and peiros? So he said, no, we find also by peiros the same difference. He said, v'chein yesh gam peiros she'enim zruim. Certain peiros are also not sown. Ukemoi tapuchei yoar, the great forest apples, or wild apples. I don't know if I've ever seen them, but tapuchei yoar. Yeah, it's like it's brought down. The Lashon in Shir HaShirim steht ketapuch ba'atzei hayoar, like the apples in the middle of all the branches of the forest. So we see that there's such a thing as tapuchei yaar.
They have in America. They have crab apple trees.
Crab apples.
Yeah, these tiny apples, like
yeah.
They look just like apples.
Yeah, so says the Rebbe, even by fruits, we see that there are many fruits that they grow without being sown, and they just grow, as it were, bli halos man. So what are you going to say by them? You can't. In other words, that the kasha was, maybe we could say that there are two factors in Gilui Koyach HaTzameach. There's one factor which is the ha'ora from the Koyach HaTzameach, well, that comes Milmaila Kabeah, it comes from the Eibishter. And then there's another inyan which comes through a pu'ula of the matter itself. A pu'ula which is not pure mitzad, the Koyach HaTzameach Atzmai, nor like an appeal which is made to the Koyach HaTzameach. And the Eibishter made that the Koyach HaTzameach answers appeals. If there's an appeal given to the Koyach HaTzameach, then it produces certain inyanim. We could tell them that we only need one thing to appeal to, we don't need two. And if we have already our ha'ora, Claudius, then that's enough. It's already efshoriyas, as you've already pointed out, it's possible. And the jump of that efshoriyas to the actual Matziyas, the key to that is the halos. In other words, the effort on the part of the, like the Alter Rebbe brings over there in the famous Igeras, chapter 20 over there, the Alter Rebbe says that we can learn from that whole idea of the Inif and Zriya. He said we can learn, that's the Inif and Halos Man, we can learn all sorts of secrets, Benegea, to Halos Man, Alidei Avedis Odom, V'inyonim Lamayla V'chulu. We can learn all sorts of Dugmois and all sorts of Musa Haskel, etc., etc. He's much better than the Alter Rebbe. I see, Baruch Hashem, I got away with it. I mean, I didn't think that this was going to go, so it seems to have gone well. Because Nimtzuluf, he said, that we've come out with the idea that there's a inifan planting, which is halos man, over where there's no planting, ain't halos man, it's all just purely the koyach of the earth itself to produce these in Yonim. So I don't know, but maybe there's not any cause. Everybody's been makabel. There's a glatik, but as they state in dort in the Igeras HaKodesh, according to my limited, sort of absolutely limited knowledge, and it's very limited. I've been beklau weit from botany, and I've been beklau, distant from brave madoim, sciences and novels. But isn't it the case that all these are sovim, and don't they sort of give forth their seeds, and their seeds blow in the wind, and they fall? So I mean, in a way, nobody plants them. Nobody plants them, but they don't plant themselves? I mean, trees, don't they give forth seeds in the wind, and those seeds fall over somewhere else? And sometimes they dare grow, and sometimes the conditions are not so good and they don't grow. But a lot of them do manage to grow. I mean, take these huge forests from the Old Dagen. The trees give forth some sort of a thing and falls further. And isn't that the case?
Yeah.
So fine. Who should have tied? What is the pshat? And the Alter Rebbe writes it over there in that Igeras HaKodesh chapter 20. He writes it over there, Mafurish. where there's no zriya alidei etzem zriya alidei adam or natir, the word natir is more to the idea of a tree, planting a tree, then these things grow from the earth. Shalei alidei zriya, shalei alidei, yeah, ela mikoyach hatzomeach atzmei sheba. But these things don't go through any other action, nor the koyach hatzomeach itself produces them. And the whole reason why there's an inyan from Zriya, the whole reason why there's an inyan from Zriya on the part of the mensch is to teach us that that's a muscle, that if you make then Moshubochim Ma'id Ma'id, as described the Alter Rebbe. It's very, very praiseworthy inyan, etc., etc. But it's on the part of the intelligent reader, sorry, well, it tells you the earth itself with the Koyach HaTzamech produces these things. Li shum inyan acher. I mean, maybe I haven't got it right.
There's some plants that grow from a bulb. Some plants grow from a bulb under the ground.
A bulb?
A bulb, yes, a bulb, and sort of like an onion. There's like an onion-like root.
It's an onion?
In the ground. The root of the plant is much like an onion. And that plant will die, and it will come back from the
that's even bigger than a garden. Because that's a whole mamish bomba. A whole sort of onion in the ground. That's even better than a. Well, you mean to say it's been from Sheshish and made braces? That's what you're talking.
No, but when it grows, the plant above the ground dies, and then it comes back the next year. No one has to re-put it.
In other words, there's no direct connection between that onion and the thing on top of the ground.
No, it's connected, but that thing dies. And the whole plant dies.
So what's producing it is the thing in the ground. I mean, there is some sort of a halos man, because the lotion over there in the Geras HaKodesh is mashma that the etzem koyach hatzamech itself produces these things. Shalei alidei halos man. That's the lotion. Is טוב, כך כתוב כאן. וזה בתחילה, זה פלא. Was it a touch that the etzem earth על ידי the koyach hatzamech produces all of these inyanim? Was it a touch?
What about different types of plants that only exist in different continents, and you don't see them in new places unless people bring the seeds? And they do grow. They have the ability to grow somewhere else.
Even without seeds?
No, with the seeds. You need the seeds. But how could...
So what are you doing? Are you answering my question?
No, I'm asking...
You're just making it even worse.
Strengthening it. Strengthening your question.
Huh?
He's strengthening your question.
Yeah, he's strengthening my question, yeah. So I must admit that I don't have a clear answer. So by mir a bissel tzorich hier in the ganze Inyan. But I mean, I do have an answer, but my answer is also tzorich here. Yesh lema. What we mean here? What was it against Kashi? There's an old saying that something that goes without effort is not something. I can't remember exactly what it is. There's an old sort of a quip, in various languages and various vernaculars and so on. And it certainly applies in Chassidus and in Yiddishkeit. That something which is not, work that doesn't come out of day effort and struggle, it's not anything. It's garnished. Is Bamera?
What you get out.
Huh?
What you put in is what you get out.
Yes, that's right. Very nice. What you put in is that's what you get out. All sorts of, quips and statement of that nature. So maybe what the Alter Rebbe means over there, because he's very careful to point out, that immediately he's brought down this idea about Alos Man Alidei Zriya. He immediately says, "V'hu Moshe or who Musa Haskel Godel le'inyan hamshachas ha'eres alidei avedas ha'adam shekol dor shenasa alidei zriya v'natiyah hari hu meshubak ma'id ma she'en kein shari ha'atzmachim משהו כזה. In other words, was ist es weiter geschafft? So we see that there's a Indian of a special value in the Indian, and kilo, if it's not that, then it's kilo really the earth that's doing it, not anything else. And it's very hard to say that the Alter Rebbe would just completely disregard the whole fact that, these things do spread seeds, they drop on the surface and then they somehow or another, they just get sucked in, or the rain pushes them in, or the air pressure or something. I don't exactly know what goes on, but they fall, in myriads all over the world, and a lot of them grow, and some of them don't manage to grow, depending on all sorts of amazing hashgachas pratiges, b'ha'inyan. So therefore we could say that what the Alter Rebbe and what Chassidus is meaning to Taina is that when is a child to say that there might be a halos man when there's an effort made? Dahainu, that somebody plants, and if they plant, then that means that they've dug and they've done something and they've made effort to see that the right zera go into the ground, and then they do all sorts of inyonim that they bring a beetle in that zera. They make sure that it gets water or other things that cause it to lose its whole yes, and that's all part of the deal. You can't just plant the seed and then just ignore it. You've got to sort of make sure that seed becomes seed. It loses all materials in the ground, and then gradually that losing of materials in the ground is this halos man. We said all halos man is beetle. It becomes bottle and then it grows. And where that's done, alidei the koyach or the odom, it's not really important here the man so much here per odom. Here it is that there's an effort put in, and that's calls out a corresponding, doesn't it? Calls out a corresponding gilui v'amshocha from the koyach tzomech aklori or aprot. In other words, that's the time. Masha enke, where all these other things happen, we see that they might fall and they might eventually get absorbed into the ground, and then somehow or another, they grow. But what makes them grow is the koyach tzomech makes them grow. Nobody did anything to promote that. That is the word. I see manik birov ha'iyun bedova. It seems to me that that's the word here, and on that is based the whole kashi here. Nobody does anything over there, and the whole thing is tolui, what you might call barachameshah, shomayim, and madach. I feel when you plant, it's tolui in rachash maim. That's what Teves brings over there in Perek B'mer Madlikin. Teves are taught in Shabbos, taught in Perek Beis. The Gemara brings that we call the Shisha Sedri Mishnah with different names. We call that Chois and Yeshuas, and this is called Zroim is called Yeshuas. If I thought all of many sort of names that we give to the Shisha Sedri Mishnah. The Zroim is called Emunah. Zroim is called Emunah, and the Zokin is called Yeshuas. If it brings Teves, we come Zroim to Emunah. Why is it called the name Emunah? So Teves says, Kasher Odom Zoireya Ba'adoma B'teach B'boyri Olamim B'Zoireya. He doesn't know what the hell is going to happen. He knows that he plans, he does what he can, but who knows that it's going to really be much-clear. When you plan, you believe intentively in the Boyri Olam. You give yourself away completely that he's going to make it grow soft, and he's going to make it much clearer. Of a soft, we see that you put in a effort. If I'm aware, that's what the Alter Rebbe says. Where you put in effort, then it's mishubochim ma'id, and then he doubles the word ma'id, and then he says that you can learn from that to inyonim how they are and avodas ha'odom le'boirei. In the meaning from Davni, Halos Man, and alle many sorts of Sachen, Kabbalah Shabbos, alle many sorts of Sachen. Lefisa kommt when the earth, these things spread all over in the wind, or however they fall, or they drop, or they go here, they go there. the Mishgalgu, Mimokim, Lamokim, it's not really, nobody does anything to it. Nothing is done. Lo korep po shum davar, and yet nonetheless somehow or another they get sucked in, or they, that's all Torah Mamish Barachmei Shamayim. Even when you planted it, it's Rachmei Shamayim. Alachas Kama V'Kama, this is Rachmei Shamayim. It does not even Mamin B'Boirei Elam, this is the Boirei Elam. And Mamela Nimtzel, if he said that really what makes it grow is the Koyach HaTzeh Samech, Kaina Tut Gornim. Nobody waters it, nobody manures it, nobody, Kaina Tut, absolutely Mamish Kuuni. And none of it, we find that the immediate cover of the earth in Smochim is immense. I mean, it's just huge. I mean, jungles is hundreds of square miles of them. Maybe even more than hundreds, maybe thousands. And bushes and grass and I mean, tens of millions and billions of them. Yeah. Where do they all come from? I mean, there's no little somebody running around planting all this and coming with his little sprayer and spraying it to see that it's got water and throwing a bit of manure here and there. It all just grows completely and utterly levad. It does it'll clear the pshat. Well, that's what the Alter Rebbe means. That is mamish. If when you plant it's all totally in the Eibishter. Allah has come when you didn't do anything. That is purely the Koyach HaTzeh. What is the Hatzlacha? It's the Elakuspedo, the Koyach HaTzeh. And Mamela, therefore said the Rebbe, we can't very well say that it's all you and you make Ha'alos Man, therefore you can be Mavatal the whole Seidim. They know right directly from the Sameach HaKlali it's going to all work. He said, no, Ma Noima with all those assumptions that we don't plant. Peter said, oh, there's no real Ha'alos Man, even though there might be a very minor one that happens to fall in that plate. But Michutz Mizeh, Akol B'Yedei Etzim Koyach HaTzeh Shabbat. Amamir mit damit is locher geht up the kasher. It shows you how careful you have to be to understand the words of the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. Mamir, the Inyonim here, kein yesh lema b'derech hefsher, korev el hefsher. The Franz said the Rebbe, madu b'maki macha zeh yitzmach ezev zeh, dafke b'maki masheni tzomech ezev acher. Right? And the same thing with Peter. They're not Alidei Aloas Zman. You want to get up the Kashia from Aloas Zman. Now there's another reason why we can't say that it'll come through Aloas Zman. The Gam, now Gam means a further point. Gam means another factor why we can't learn that way. Me'achashu koyach kloli. Since this koyach hatzomeach hakloli is a koyach kloli, hainu rak leklolos inyan hatzmicha. Since, as we pointed out several times already, it's only the klolus inyan of the inyan hatzmicha. Hine enu shayich shagarin hanizra yeh halo asman elov. Afil if it's nizra, and afil there is a yemas halo asman, or it's not going to be shayich the whole inyan. In other words, up to now we're going. It is shayich maybe to answer to argue to be halo asman. Gam tells me no, even that's not good. The whole kash is Melchatchila not there, because you can't really describe it as a Haloas Man, because Yachas is too far away. Yeah, that little Haloas Man made by the planting wouldn't be enough to reach this Kloli. In other words, wherever there's Haloas Man, there always has to be some sort of a error. And Silas Barichas, that the type of things that we're Mamshich, Alidei Haloas Man, have some basic error to their way to Sanifra. So therefore, said the Rebbe, with that Gam he puts it all out. Yeah, and he says it's not really because that's two Claudias, and therefore the Garin and Israel couldn't be Beklavas Alos Man Elo. Now we get on to the Indian of Claudi again. So now we're going to define a little bit more closer the Indian of what do we mean by Claudi.
If this Klali can't, if the man can't reach the Koach HaKlali, then what are we talking about in English the Kodesh? That the seed can arouse the Koach HaKlali. It can arouse something.
No. No. What he means to say is that that's talking to the Ha'or HaProtis or in Geras HaKodesh he's just talking about the ability to call out from the earth. You understand? Here he's trying to specificize it a bit, but in the Nakuda Atzmis they're both talking about the same meaning. That there can be a Halos Man. I was only using a Geras HaKodesh, but again to the Etzim Halos Man or not Halos Man. Over there he's obviously talking about the ability to call out from the earth. So he says, Hine koyach akloli hanao. What do we mean by calling it a different kloli? He says, Hine koyach akloli hanao, ari einze kemoi klal uprat. It's not like an union of klal uprat. The beklal uprat, hari bihaklal niklal haproti. Validei halos man me'eze min proti, misoider beginnus aprat shebe'achlal. That's like I just pointed out. The halos man is always shaykh a certain erech between them. And when we say that you were ma'ir or oyer l'mayla alidei halos man, there was always a certain erech badova. So therefore he says that when would it be shaykh to talk about halos man magabi this kloli, if he were in inverted commas a normal kloli, if he were a usual kloli. Because what is a usual kloli? A general, what you might call rule or a general state, which nonetheless includes in himself his details. In other words, he's a klal that inside the klal are contained all of the details, and therefore you can say that your halos man reaches those details, and there becomes aroused a particular specific inyan sheba klal that you touch through your halos man. In other words, when we say normally ein lechoma beklal ela ma sheish befrat, or ein lecha befrat ela ma sheish beklal, well, that's normally, and that's the whole concept, and particularly in Nigla, that's what we mean with klal uprat. In other words, the klal is like a sort of a general statement after considering all the pratim. You find a general inyan which is common to all of them, and that sums them up, and in its way it embraces all of them. But those inyanim are found inside that klal. They have a certain identity of their own inside that klal. Therefore, said the Rebbe, there it fits the concept of halos man. In other words, we're coming back to this idea that so-called there's going to have to be another hour in the middle. But in that they would pass this whole idea, that would fit the whole idea of halos man l'gabi a klal, because the halos man would reach its parallel with inside the klal and would call it out me'ela ela gilui. In other words, depending on what you mean when you say kloli. And that's the normal understanding of the word kloli, and that fits to the concept of halos man. How is it koyach ha-kloli hanal? Our koyach ha-kloli, the koyach ha-tzomeach ha-kloli, well, he's the ayin from the atzmi, hu rak le-klolos inen atzmicha, hainu rak ma shenoisen mokeim le-inen atzmicha kanal. Like we said, he gives efshoriyah. It already becomes possible that it can be nimsha. But not that he's just a gathering together of all the klalim. And that's what we mean by the word hiyuli. He's a hiyuli, albeit not a hiyuli atzmi, but he's a hiyuli, meaning that he's a klal which he doesn't become tired by his pratim. In other words, that if all the pratim come out of him, he doesn't get, how do you call it, lessened or negated or formatted. He remains exactly what he is, a fila, the pratim come out of him. And therefore he's klal in a more embracing sense than the normal concept of klalu. Right. Therefore, a klal of that nature is you can't have a halos man through a prat to that klal. How is it koyach ha-kloli hanal or a klal inyan atzmicha mashem noisen mokim? That's what we said before. He's noisen efshoriyas le'inyan atzmicha. Ba'ein ha-pratim klulim boy, but the pratim are not klulim in him at all. He's separate and he's mudal mea klolim, just that he can give forth those protim. And that's what we saw, nimtsoim mimenu, the protim come out from him, b'derech hamtsoa. But not they come out just like a prat is nimshach mea elam ela gilui. U'koya kloli, cause there ain't a magia haloes man proti. Yeah, it doesn't come any haloes man proti, it doesn't help. So the sowing of your specific seed, like that, doesn't assist you. Ki'im haloes man kloli davke, hu shamagia l'shom. Now, here's an interesting one. There can be a haloes man, but it has to be a haloes man kloli. Hu shamagia l'shom. Ve'am shocha hu einon shenimsha b'chinas am shocha proti is, כי אם מה שמאיר בחינת כוח הכללי כמו שהוא. So that ourselves the geweldige Schale, wo sie tun ist. Was ist das für ein Hallo ist man kloli, which is mamshik the whole ha'ora kloli is כמו שהוא. What is it? So I have to say that there are certain pu'ulas which can be done in the earth, what their pool is klolium, and they wake up the klolius of the earth to produce. For example, they say, one of the things they bring down in Sforim, when they get to, it's even brought down in the Gemara daughter, in Cheskas Abatim daughter, in growing ground and the whole thing, is that every few years it's a good thing to sort of leave the ground, not to work it fully. And so, maybe the Balakarka, he can tell him why didn't he work it, because he was giving it time to rest. All sorts of different stories there in the Gemara, the different times that one had to get time to say. So, and some of the different, Meforshim, but Derech HaTam, well, they want to suggest that one of the inyonim in Shemitah, for example, one of the things that Hashem blesses us with in Shemitah is that the earth rests. It doesn't have to v'sholf so ha'oretz Shabbos l'Hashem. The earth literally rests. And after we see that that's a form of inyan which wakes up from the whole fertility in general of the earth. We're talking here about a general inyan that people say, oh, that earth is already not, it's certainly not good, it's been overused, or it's no longer doing. And Alidei, what you allow it to rest, and you make a certain, almost like hedera pula, and you maybe water it, or you just do it in a general way, certain inyonim, well, that refreshes and strengthens michalos, the whole inyan of the koyach hakloli, to produce it. In other words, it once again becomes what you might call a productive earth, even though we haven't really decided yet what it's going to produce and how we're going to use it. But now we're confident that it'll be better. And for example, in a slightly more limited way, we find the general watering of the ground, or turning it over, they call plowing it slightly, and then watering it, or throwing manure in it. Or they have a pool of klolias of the whole world, and becomes a better productive type of earth, even though not for anything specific klal. We don't even know yet. You might even have to ask the botanists and other sort of people what would be the best thing to plant now, etc., because that's an inyan kloli. And remember, we see that there can be a halos man klolias, and it can be a certain hamshocha klolias. That this earth is now declared by mumchim that it's ready to produce of exactly was and when. And particularly there's certain gesehen in certain parts of the world where for generations, or maybe for mi'az, Habriya, nobody ever really touched that particular part of the earth. And then after a lot of working, a lot of this, they did this and this. Now they say, now this particular part of the earth can maybe, be productive. And then they have to bring in all sorts of mumchim, and they start clearing around what could possibly produce for egg or ma. And how do they do that? That they make tests. Well, those tests are already to the proteus. They are a proteus. But the klolius was done alidei. The klolius years, but they worked it and they broke it up and they maybe put in a certain general things like manures and mitzvot. And I know that even here in Eretz Yisrael, certain parts that they've been in the hands of the Arabim and the Turks all the years, and the Ramban paskins that if Eretz Yisrael falls into the hands of Zorim, into the hands of Goyim, and the Ramban said it doesn't produce like it's supposed to, all the things that are told in the Torah does not produce. Once Yidden came back, and even though not all of them were showing Torah or mitzvahs the way it should be, they started working certain parts of the earth. Also, they started growing things that mamish 1000 Jahren they never grew, nicht gewachsen. Solche Inyonim, and that's Vadaya in that all of a sudden the Koach HaTzameach sort of woke up Chadash. Werd es weg. Mi asa. That's a ha'alo espan klolis. Eish Leimer שזה עניין רוחני גם. That's a עניין רוחני, like Teves said, boiteach b'beirei elomim. So we have to say that maybe some of these guys didn't boiteach out to get it kach. But the Gemara says that they knew deep inside the Neshama Elokis at Kizota, but this is after all Eretz HaKodesh. If I remember Be'ezim Mokim B'nafsham, they believed that there would be a inif and boiteach b'beirei elomim or Uzreya, Mamera, Batea, Babeira, Elomim, and Yemi said Smicha. Kein Yeshlema B'derech Efsha. Mamera comes to Islofi says that the Rebbe says the halos man kloli can never become a proti, but there can be such a thing as halos man kloli. You can make to that haora kloli is a halos man, and he gives also an answer, Kabiyahu, also in the form of a klali. Yeah, so he said to Kamoy Kain Yuvan, the Ba'ara Akoyach HaTzomer HaKlali, Lo Yegir B'chin Zaralos Ma Mizriyas HaGarina Proti. So the Zriya of the Garina Proti is not going to help him, it's not going to cause any shinui or any product from the Haros Akoyach HaTzomer HaKlali. Acha Inyan, and now we start a new Inyan. Shabayin yesh base madregas. Have to say there are really two madregas. One is the ayin hakloli, the hara closing out is the ayin haprati, and then to my great relief, the Rebbe puts in a bracket there alidei tzimtzum. That or he wipes the sweat off for a number of brows, because the only shayla is how do you get from that horas man klolis to the horas man pratis? We just was it the Dova HaMakashir, HaMa'ir, Beinayim? So the Rebbe puts in that word, Alitei Tzimtzum. It's well known that the bracketed remarks in the works of the Rebbe Nishmas Eid are always very important, that they always introduce a new oifen of the Svara more than what the unbracketed remarks do. So Alitei Zeh, we'll see, Be'ez Hashem, that we're going to earn a certain Indian Choshev.
There's a very great thing. I just thought about it when you're giving the class. It's a very great thing you could learn out from this, which is, I mean, it's sort of very practical. But if you notice that there's great philosophers who talk about this, that every blade of grass and every leaf of the tree, it's all different. Yeah. So from that you could learn out Hashem's infiniteness. So from that cloud, all these products that you see, they're all different. They're all these. It's not that a tree grows. It's a completely different tree with completely different leaves, even though it's of its type and so on and so forth. But every tree, every fruit that grows out, if you look at it, it's different.
Okay. In other words, what you're making, the point you're making is that each little piece of vegetation is different to the other one.
Right. But if you were to examine two blades of grass of the same species, you would find differences in this.
What is it?
And just like sort of like when it snows, every single snowflake is different.
That's amazing, isn't it? Oh, it's mind-boggling. So it's just like human being, it's just like it is by man, by the human species. The Gemara says, "Ein doimer echad lechaver, ve'ein yisayim afil l'shovet." But afil gufam is also not bedim, like the Medrash, but in Medrash. It comes to us that every inyan, what the Teves creates, is individual.
Sure.
And that's an amazing point about him. That every inyan is an individual inyan. So maybe it's very hard to imagine how the kloli, and here on the other hand, from that we can already understand understand why we need at the beginning our klal. Because I didn't talk about that yet. I'm saving that till the next class. With klal we have to talk, and it's all very well to talk about the Indian, but to be masbid to yourself, the time adora. Why do we know all of these haroras? Why don't we just go straight from the Avish having said, straight into the Indian of the Pele up the other. You follow? So here we see that there's a certain Indian of the klal being too much for the prat, and yet Davki, because there's such an unbelievable klal, Davki from him can be Nitan, the Efshar is that there should be an endless process. You understand? That's an amazing point what he made. That klal, and that's what the Rebbe said, that klal is not a klal in prat. It's a klal to any prat that you could possibly imagine. In other words, you name it, he can produce it. And that's the amazing thing. It's another type of klal altogether. It's under a musik in klal. Very good. I'm very